This is by far the best guitar solo to learn for beginner players for a variety of reasons, which we will get into thoroughly in just a second. The solo is from the song Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And just stay with me. Even if you don't love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, even if you don't love the song Californication, I still think it is an extremely important solo to learn because, first of all, it gives you an opportunity to learn a solo in its entirety from start to finish, which is something so many beginners and intermediates struggle to do, right? Well, I'll learn this section and okay, that's good enough and whatever, right? I'll move into something else because it gets complicated. This is simple enough to hammer and nail, right, from start to finish. Second of all, it gives us the opportunity to really figure out how to bring in these skills and techniques and phrasing from the solo into our own playing, which is another thing that intermediates, beginners alike struggle with, right? To actually bring the skills and techniques and phrasing that they're learning in their favorite songs and solos into their own playing, into their own creative expression. We all want to do that. And that's something you need to do to be a great player, okay? How to transfer your influences and create your own unique style. So with that, let's jump right in. The solo is in the key of F sharp minor. Now I want to acknowledge for anyone who's really familiar with the song, well, wait a second. I thought it was in A minor. The rest of the song is in A minor. We change keys, we shift for the solo, right? That's the deal. I'm not going to get into a huge theory, breakdown right now for why that works and why that sounds good, but that's the deal. The solo is in F sharp minor. Okay, so we start up here. I'm going to flash the tabs on the screen and zoom in on the old hand so you can see what's up. But we go. All right, we've got that nice bend, and we repeat that. And right away, we can take a beautiful lesson from that repetition. There it is. Repetition is important. And recognize, right, John Frusciante, the guitar player, is a great freaking guitarist. He can shred. But oftentimes it's more important to put melody first to really make something pleasing. If you're always trying to impress other guitar players with your solos and shred and go super fast, you'll make more mistakes, you won't actually level up, and your solos will actually end up sounding monotonous and they'll blur together and there won't really feel like there's any true creativity because you're just trying to go lightning fast. Focus on melody. So if we brought this into a blues context, I'm just going to go, A minor pentatonic. Well, couldn't I just linger there? And couldn't I repeat that? Maybe add an extra note? And wouldn't that still sound pretty solid without, doing anything outrageous, keeping it pretty simple? All right, something to recognize too here. There is that bend taking place when you're bending, right? So you get to bring in some good techniques into your playing. We want to support, we're bending with our ring finger here. We want to support with our middle and index fingers as well to not only help get it up to where we need to go because we're bending this note, 11, up to 13, right? Emulating this note right here. And then bringing it down. So not only is it going to help us lift it, it's going to create better control than if we're just isolating the ring finger. It's a weak bend, all right? And it's going to be inaccurate. The string might slip from under your finger, things like that. So support it with your middle and index fingers as well, okay? Important technique. This shape right here, it's an F sharp minor, based on that larger, bar chord shape. So, right, bringing in an element of arpeggios to layer this perfectly over the backing chords, okay? Something else to think about. So if you're like, I don't need to know arpeggios, I don't need to know any of that stuff. It's a good reminder why you should know as many concepts as possible in guitar. That's just something I've heard before. All right, so we've got that, we're repeating it twice. All right, so once you do that twice, we've got that next section. So we've got another bend and there's a little extra technique on there. Right? You're not just lifting and getting right off of it, and you're not bringing it back down all the way either. As you're coming down, you're getting right into the 9th fret, right? So you're on the 11th fret bending. You're starting to descend. And then you've got the 9th fret. You're coming to the 9th fret. You're not pulling off. You're picking again, all right? So you might need to work on that. And you can isolate it and now turn this into a bit of technique work, okay? You don't have to put on a metronome. You don't have to put on the backing track, nothing like that, all right? You can isolate the skills. This adds to that idea of, again, I'm gonna bring it over here to an A blues. If I'm, really quiet, right? That beginning is a little quieter. Right, I can start there, I can repeat it. Well then, we've got this next section in the Californication solo. Right, all downstrokes. He lifts things, right? The dynamics get a little more aggressive, right? Well, same thing. I can, punch a little bit more, and that creates this nice, contrast without, again, overcomplicating things. Keeping it relatively simple, right? The positions, what he's doing isn't out of control, but it sounds good, right? I always loved this solo. Even before I started playing guitar, I was like, oh yeah, this sounds cool. I love these guys. All right. Similarly, even if it's not your favorite style, that's something you can do in your solos. Light, soft, repetition, and then boom, break it up. Okay. Now the next section, well, guess what? This note that he goes to in the first section, look familiar? It's the same note he hits here. These are the same note. All right, so that's the next section. He just does that once. But it's a good reminder. It's repetition, but it's changing octaves, so it still sounds different. And now he's added this note here, right? 12th fret of the high E. And then, instead of repeating it note for note, right? So similar though, because it's the same bend as we hit on the G string, but now it's the high E. Interesting. So we're not changing things up drastically. I'll go back to my blues scenario, right? Something soft. Well, then maybe I shift up here. And it's literally the same phrase, but I've now moved it up to a different position. So it sounds a little bit different. I'm creating contrast, but I'm doing the same thing. So, recognizing that, just repeating yourself and changing shapes, adding like one note in the mix, playing a little harder and then playing soft, that can give you this opportunity to hit a great solo that people go like, oh yeah, this person knows what they're doing. This person's pretty darn good. But you might be brand new. You might be, 6 months into your playing journey, and all of a sudden somebody's thinking to themselves, hey, this person knows what they're doing, because you're taking in some of these elements. So be conscious as you're listening to other songs and solos about what's really taking place. Become the scientist of playing. Observe, and get into the lab and bring it into your own realm. Okay. Just want to acknowledge also, I gotta reset this guitar. That high E is sounding funky when I bent on the 14th fret. But regardless, we will go on. We finished here. We left off here. Then we've got this run. If you think about the pentatonic scale, I'll go down here. I know I referenced that earlier. I always think a pentatonic skeleton is like so important to anyone who wants to move around the neck. I have a lesson on that I think a lot of people have responded well to, so I'll link that here. But if you look at that, you use that as a framework, he just basically, Frusciante goes into a major scale run. that's the major element. But that's pentatonic because he skips this note right here. Right? He skips it on this portion. He'll hit it later. But that's the next section. All right, so right after that, he goes into this bend where he's hitting the G and B string. So another technique piece, it's a great one for honing and, dialing in your bending. He does that 3 times. Okay? Before I get into that next piece, think about that scale run. So simple. So simple. I'm going to bring it back over to my blues scenario. Again, just to give you a reference point also, the genres are changing, but if I, just to keep it, with the same phrase I was using, and then a little harder, more aggressive like he does in his solo, and then I bring that, I change the, the area and I go up an octave and hit the same phrase, well then I can, just hit like a really simple scale run. And all of a sudden, I'm bringing together like, oh, this could be a pretty nice little blues solo just by bringing those concepts in. Hey man, start light, take a second, follow the melody as opposed to being really fast. You'll still sound great. If your goal is to sound great, shredding, I feel like is for other guitar players. Certainly there are plenty of people who don't play guitar who love Van Halen, things like that. But that same person might be just as impressed by some other solo that isn't, so shreddy. And that's the whole goal in my mind. Just like guitar players don't just love shredding, solos. We also love something melodic. B.B. King, right? There are plenty of John Mayer solos, even though he can play fast and he can rip into it. But the Waiting on the World to Change solo, I'm blanking on all this stuff. But you know what I mean? Melodic is killer. Okay, so just a good reminder there. I go up here, you can do that on the high E. That's the whole solo, right? That's the whole thing. So we finish on that, I'll kind of use this as a separator. I just think if you're going to bend up here on the high E, it's a harder transition or it's not going to sound as smooth. You can decide, right? That's the same as, and again, I will acknowledge that my guitar needs to be reset. My apologies. I have a newborn child. Some of the things that I want to have time for, I do not have time for. But they're the same bend, they're the same notes, but I just think up here, is easier to lead you into that last run, okay? But remember, sometimes you'll see a tab. There are even songbooks, I've got my stack of songbooks over here, where the tablature and the music is incorrect. Or you can play it in a different place and you might watch the person playing. You're like, wait, the way they, finger something is different than what the tablature's showing. So just keep that in mind, right? Sometimes those things are wrong. Because I have seen it where it's on the high E, but I've seen it in other ways as well. That's the whole solo. Okay, I know I broke it into different parts and different segments, but that's because I wanted you to hear it, while breaking it into another section, all right, into another genre, into another context, so that you can do the very same thing. Now, in the description, you are going to get all those tabs, okay, for free. There is a link, a PDF, it's a free download, has all of the tabs for the solo. What you need to do is you need to look up Californication. I would do it on YouTube so you can actually go into the settings and bring it down to, 50% to start, okay? And you can actually learn it note for note that way. If you really bring down the speed of the video. And you can go note for note and you can look at those tabs and get things under your fingers, all right? If you try to go too fast and you're trying to listen to things, it's not gonna go well. Dial in your ear, right? It's ear training to a certain extent to make sure you're nailing things and you're playing along with it at that speed before you bump it up. All right, now these tabs, these lessons, I wanna keep them on YouTube, I wanna keep them free, so I will plug right now that also in the description is a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page, which is just a way in which you can leave a little tip if you feel so inclined, but certainly no pressure. I want you to be great guitar players, and if you want to support for free, just like the video and subscribe to the channel. All right, that's helpful enough. And we've got lots of good stuff coming out soon enough, and there is lots of good stuff up here already. And that's really the deal. I hope this was helpful. I hope that makes some sense. Leave a comment with a question if you need to clarify anything, but segment this as you're learning it. Make sure you got one part down before you move on to the next, and then bring it all together and listen to the solo to do that. All right, I don't necessarily need to bore you with it without the backing track or without the actual song playing. You can do that on your own, and then learn how to do that with all your other favorite solos. Bring them into different contexts. Change the key. Bring this into the key of, B major or something, right? And you'll really be able to dial that in and recognize how to move it, things like that, okay? Love you all. See you on the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Peace.